we've been hearing reports that Ronna Romney McDaniel, the current RNC chairwoman, may not be long for that job as long as she's been in it. She may be headed for the exit soon. In fact, over the weekend, President Trump sat down with Maria Bartiromo, and she asked, and he kind of did a little bit of foreshadowing about what comes next.
The RNC doesn't seem to be so strong. I mean, the Democrats have all the money. Look at what we see. We get the Democrats actually with the money and spending it. The RNC seeking credit lines. The RNC reported its lowest bank balance at the point in any year in 2016. Comerica says the Michigan GOP defaulted on a loan of $500,000.
So I have a lot of money, and the money that they get, people are not looking at the RNC. They want changes. You have to understand, I have nothing to do with the RNC. I'm separate.
How's Ronna McDaniel doing?
I think she did great when she ran Michigan for me. I think she did okay initially in the RNC. I would say right now there'll probably be some changes made.
He's understating his role. If the current leader of the party doesn't like the RNC chairperson, they change. That's how it works. And one other piece here, of course, the big piece, the New York Times reporting this week that Ronna McDaniel is planning to step down from her position shortly after the South Carolina primary in late February. McDaniel releasing a statement today indicating at the moment she is currently the RNC chairwoman, but not much about her future. Here to talk about all of this is Ryan Girdusky. He's the founder of the 1776 Project Political Action Committee and the co-author of the book, They're Not Listening, How the Elites Created the Nationalist Populist Revolution. Ryan, great to see you in studio today.
Thank you for having me.
Sir.
I know. I'm excited to be in studio. I'm in town, so I was like, I got to see Vince in person.
It's nice to see you. So what do you make of this? You know, Ronna McDaniel has been, she's had a historically long tenure, actually.
Yeah, I think the longest ever.
Of the RNC. She's overseen a bunch of elections now.
And they're all losses.
They haven't gone well.
Yeah. It's hard to sit there and say that you are this great, they did raise a lot of money in 2020, but they lost the presidency. They lost the House in 2018, although they kept the Senate, and then they lost the Senate in 2022, and they barely kept the House. So it's not been an amazing tenure. Certainly, the 2010 to 2014 leaders, those years, had a lot more election wins. And you have to sit there, and people are really frustrated with her, and the base hates her, and the only person who was keeping her for that long was Trump. And now the big question is who could fulfill that role?
Yes. No, that's a key question. And I've said from time to time, I've met her a bunch of times. I've interviewed her. She's a very nice person.
I'm sure she
but
is.
Niceness is not actually the qualification.
Yeah, niceness
for
doesn't
heading
win
a
elections.
party. It's about how is the party done, and typically you look to the leaders and you hold them accountable if they don't do well, and you reward them if they do well. So at this point, it looks like she's headed for the exits. What should the RNC be looking for in a replacement?
The most important thing is fundraising. The person who leads the RNC is not in charge of policy. Right? They are not in charge of what laws are passed. They're not in charge of messaging. They are in charge of fundraising. Kevin McCarthy, if he wanted it, would be an amazing, amazing head of it.
I saw Matt Gaetz was endorsing that idea yesterday.
But it's true. He raised a lot of money. He's not in, and listen, he could do the job, and he works well with Trump, and Trump liked him enough. So it seems obvious to me.
And McCarthy has a granular level understanding of House races, for instance. Like he knows all the districts, he knows all the pressure points and the things
where
that are
to put the
involved
investments in.
Yeah.
And look, and he was also really good. Something that no one really knows. These safe districts, the Ronnie, what's his name in Texas?
Jackson.
Ronnie Jackson, Marjorie Taylor Greene. These super safe Republican districts. A lot of time, the speaker would request them give excess funds that they have in their reelection because they don't need them to vulnerable members.
Sure.
So that was really important, and that was a really important part. MTG did a lot of that under Kevin McCarthy, was to help vulnerable members and support the party as a whole. That's really important, and a leader does that. And McCarthy's PAC was very, very well funded and very good. And I guess we'll wait and see. But he would be a great choice. And the only other person who raises buku money in the party is Tim Scott, but he's not going to abandon the Senate for that position.
Right. Okay. All right. But it's an important position.
It's a really important position. The party is strapped for cash. A lot of state parties are strapped for cash. And the Trump campaign, they have a lot of money, but they don't have as much money as they should have.
And I know the reporter over at Red State, her name escapes me at the moment. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head. I'll look it up. But she's been reporting extensively on the RNC's expenditures, and she keeps looking at all through the list and going, Why are you spending money on flowers? Why is that?
350 grand flowers. You know, there was a program that that Rana did, which was to help non-citizens pass their citizenship test so they could eventually become possibly Republicans. What a waste of money, because there was no guarantee they would be, and it's like to teach them American civics. We need to get voters out to the polls. The lowest propensity voters in this country are non-college educated whites who vote the most Republican in this country. In 2016, there were 44 million non-college educated whites who were not even registered to vote. There's probably 35 million today.
Yes.
That's the whole Midwest. That's the whole election landslide. Why aren't we registering those voters? If MTG's district had the same voter propensity as the city of Atlanta, Georgia would have gone Republican in 2020.
I've heard about, there are disparate efforts that are not quite so unified that try to register the very voters you're talking about, but you really do need a national apparatus to get to them. But like, for instance, hunters, like guys who spend a lot of time in the field hunting, natural Republican voters. 100%. But you have a lot of them across the country who are not actually either registered or are very... like they don't show up to the polls that often. 100. You need people out there saying, this is totally in your interest. It's going to work against you if you don't show up. Get out there, but you need an apparatus that's designed to bring them in.
And what is going to hurt Trump in 2024, what hurt Republicans in 2022, is college-educated whites who are the highest propensity voters have moved away from the party. They were turned off. They've been moving away for a long time, way before Trump. It accelerated under Trump. But they are going to vote because they always vote, and they will be voting Democrat. There are more non-college educated whites, but you need them to show up. The most important swing states in this country are still 90 to 95% black white states. Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin. This whole Latino surge will not affect those states at all. Neither will the Asian surge, because they're 90 to 95% black white states.
But a lot of what this comes down to is actual turnout, because there's not much more to the argument that needs to be made. If you look at all the polling, it shows that non-college educated, well, people of all colors, non-college educated, they're wildly supportive of Trump. But getting them to actually show up involves political action.
And that's what the New York Times poll said. Trump's strongest supporters are people who are low propensity, who don't usually show up. You have to drag them out. You have to remind them they're in their own world. They're on TikTok. They're watching The Housewives. They're doing other things. They're not paying attention to politics like we are. There has to be an apparatus to constantly remind them, to poll them out, to ask them to bank their vote and vote early, which is so important to vote early if you're a low propensity voter.
Okay, let me move to another political issue involving Republicans. Yesterday, Nikki Haley got her butt handed to her in a race that really wasn't supposed to happen at all. There was just a regular old primary vote in Nevada forced by Democrats because they don't like the caucus process. The legitimate way that the Republicans pick their candidate in Nevada is through the caucus later this week. So Trump's name was not on the ballot for this symbolic vote yesterday. Yet Nikki Haley lost anyway. On the ballot was an option for none of these candidates. And people overwhelmingly went for none of these candidates over Nikki Haley. They just didn't want her at all, which was amazing. It reminds me of this cut from Brewster's Millions.
The only thing that's silly is the power of the people's vote. And I think the people should use it to vote for none of the above.
None of the above. Richard Pryor was right. In Nevada, they chose that. None of the above. How does that happen? And how embarrassing for Nikki Haley.
So that's a rule in Nevada. Nevada has every election as none of the above. And it is not the first time none of the above has won. In the 2014 Democratic primary for governor, none of the above won. And they were literally had two front runners, and they came. Like, that must really hurt.
Amazing.
She's the first presidential candidate to lose none of the above. There was no delegates rewarded. She didn't campaign there, but it is embarrassing. But you know what? She doesn't have a job to go back to. Like, that's the thing. Like, what is she, if she wasn't running for president? It's not like she's the governor to go home to, like DeSantis was. Like, he had a job to do. She just wants to run for president. So this is the vanity project, and she is getting a third of the vote, and those voters have to be invited back to the party in general. Like, that means something.
But she'll have a job, though. She'll have a very well-paid job at somewhere. Not in government.
No, but she'll be serving arms somewhere. But she doesn't need to go to someplace. There's no rush for her to be someplace. So why, if you want to run for president that badly, and you think that you're gonna, be Pat Buchanan in 1992 against George H.W. Bush, and you'll have your second run in 2028 or whatever you think, go for it.
Yeah. You're friends with Chris Bedford, right? You know
Oh, yeah.
Chris? All right, good. So my buddy Chris was on Fox today. He had this to say.
Primary was meaningless, but enough people still decided to leave the comfort of their homes and leave the dinner table and go there and say, I want anyone but Nikki Haley. I mean, the whole reason she seems to be running is because, unlike some other candidates, she hasn't run out of money. There's still a lot of people who can make that money. But unless Brian Hooks and the Kochs can invent a time machine with all that money that brings it back to 2012, when her brand of Republican politics were actually in style, I don't really see any hope. And nothing's changed on the ground in South Carolina so far. So she's headed for an embarrassment in her home state unless she decides to take that money and drop it.
I mean, it does seem like that's what's ahead for her.
Yeah, I mean, she's hoping for a second. I mean, listen, there's a lot of states where Democrats can vote coming up. That may, South Carolina is one of them. Michigan's one of them.
Yeah.
A lot of states don't register votes by party. She's hoping that one of these states where Trump's not popular, I guess she breaks, and she can sit there and say that there is a third of the party that wants somebody besides Trump. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but listen, if this one makes her happy, I guess go for it. It's not going to mean anything.
But the indictment of her candidacy is what you just mentioned. This kind of it's been powered by Democrat support and Democrat money. I mean, the whole idea
former
was
Republicans.
Like Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn co-founder, giving a tremendous amount of money with the express purpose of trying to destroy Trump, and she was perfectly happy with that being the public statement of her biggest donor, and she was like, "Okay, I'm going to run with it."
There is an argument that there is a population of this party, of our party, who do not want Trump, who are uncomfortable with Trump as a person, for his personality, for everything. And that is a legitimate conversation to have of how do you welcome those people back into a general election. They are needed to win in most swing places. She's not having that conversation. She's like Trump. She's like Trump's old and can't be president.
No, but the effect of her involvement in the race, to the extent that it influences anybody, is to further distance those voters from Trump.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you. There is a thing that she could be doing. She's not doing it, though. That's what's interesting.
And the other candidates have. The other candidates who dropped out of the race said, you know what, I'm with Trump. I disagreed with him. You know, even in his final statement, as DeSantis left, he said, I didn't like the Fauci stuff, but I'm here to tell you, Donald Trump would be a much better president of the United States, and I'm here to endorse him.
Buchanan ran against George H.W. Bush, and then he gave the culture war speech at the convention and said, get behind George H.W. Bush. He's our guy. It didn't work out, but he did say that, though.
I do, before I let you go here, I do want to ask you about Fauci. I mean, excuse me, not Fauci. Forget Fauci.
I don't know anything
Screw
anymore.
Fauci.
Yeah.
DeSantis. I want to ask you about DeSantis.
Yeah.
Because you wrote a piece recently about your experience with the DeSantis campaign, and it's honestly, I was laughing out loud at some of it. I'm sure you were kind of tearing your hair out about what you were experiencing. But at one point, you were invited in kind of into the inner circle of influencers, the types of people who are supportive of DeSantis and might be able to spread the word about his campaign. Just if you could just give us some of the Cliff's Notes of what that was like.
So we were invited to Tallahassee. I'm not going to name any other influencers there because that's their story, and I only said it because people were leaking what I said. But we went there, and they introduced the senior staff, and they were all Ted Cruz former employees from 2016. And I said, "There's no one from a winning presidential campaign. This is problematic." And then I had said to the
you're driving people crazy immediately when you say stuff like that. Yeah.
And I had said to the influencers, several of them there, I said, "Listen, things are not going well. This was April." I said, "He's going down in the polls. Trump is surging. He's been attacking him for 6 months. You have to be brutally honest with him. Like you can't be sucked into being with a powerful person. You have to tell him the truth."
Right.
And most of them were like, "You're so great. We love you so much. This is so fantastic." And I was like, "Your book was terrible. You didn't have a message. You need to have you can't say Florida 700 times. Like you need a trajectory for the country that you want to sell, like a vision for the country." And I said, and by the way, I said this, I said, you, for as smart as you are, as good of a baseball player you were in high school, you would not get into Yale today because you are a straight white man. And that is the fear of every white middle-class family in this country who are Republican voters, that their kids are going to discriminate against by race. This is a pre-Harvard case.
Right.
And I said, you need to talk about that because Donald Trump never was from a middle-class family, and you were, and you can connect with voters like that. And, in one ear, out the other. Not for him. I mean, he was responsive, but immediately upon that, we'd go to the next person, and they were like, "You're so great. You're so wonderful." And I go, "This is nothing." And then he asked everybody, what are the most important issues facing the country? And they were like, trans kids. And I was like, immigration, crime, economy. Immigration, crime, economy. Rinse, recycle, repeat. Those are the only
Turns
three
out
things.
if I were to look right now, which I do all the time, at the interest polling in the country, it's exactly what you said.
It's always
immigration, crime, the economy.
Forever. It will always be that. number of times I tried to speak to the campaign and the team, and I really tried to do my best, and it was like slamming my head against a brick wall.
They also didn't want your advice. If I'm being honest, the whole point is to make it appear that they're taking your advice, but what they're really doing is buying your favor because they want you to be in public advancing the cause of the campaign. Of course,
and I still want Ron DeSantis to be president of the United States. It's not going to happen. I think he'd be a great president of the United States.
Did you think so you experienced it in some sense on the inside. You watched how it all played out. Did you think that they managed him too much? I mean, because in the wake of his campaign, you saw all these videos that he started releasing, statements like immediately, like not poll tested, not waiting for a campaign apparatus to approve it. It was just like, here's a video about how stupid this thing the left is doing is. Well, I was like, where was this Ron DeSantis the entire campaign?
I'll tell you something I never told anybody before. So I asked the team, why isn't he? I said to DeSantis, you need to attack Trump. Here, take my phone. I said to him, take my phone and start tweeting from you. Like, log in and start tweeting.
Right.
And they all laughed, whatever. And someone says, oh, yeah, he doesn't tweet. He doesn't tweet. He doesn't do that. And I was like, well, he should. He needs to be out there more often. He should. And then some staffer said to me, well, there's a law in Florida called the Florida Sunshine Act, which means that all of your personal emails and text messages have to be made available by public if it's requested. So elected officials in Florida do not email or text very often. And so they said, oh, no, we don't do a lot of internet communications for that reason. And I was like, okay, well, it's 2024 and you need to be instantaneous on a lot of things. And that was an excuse given to me. I don't know if it was legitimate. I don't know if it was right. I don't know if it was real, but that's what they told me. And I just felt like I was screaming into the void.
And if you're a candidate who comes across as contrived and managed and and laundered, people detect that. They smell it instantly. You've got to appear. You got to be authentic, real, and you got to be actually genuinely react to things.
And it's heartbreaking because he has a real story. He is a real person. He's got a lot of accomplishments.
Guy's a star. No question.
He's amazing, and it's all. It was failed.
No question. Guy's a star. I mean, he was running. It was like, he was running into like a very big
January,
force in Republican
he was polling
politics.
Above Trump. In January, after the 2020 midterms, he was polling above him.
And then the left decided to drop every indictment under the sun.
Yes, that did change a lot of things.
Against the man for no reason. Well, other than to meddle in the election. Hey, Ryan Girdusky, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. A lot of great perspectives. Always nice to talk to you.
Thank you.